Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk about how to draw a point on a screen. It's the foundation upon which the rest of the worksheet, circles, lines, rectangles, triangles, all work. Some of these concepts might be unfamiliar to you, and they're part of coordinate geometry and they're part of kind of maths. I will pause and try to explain them and maybe run a parallel video or point you to some after the video as part of the attachment. The purpose of this is to pause the video as I'm doing it, type in the code and run it, and hopefully as I go through and demonstrate the code, what it's doing, why it's doing what it does, it'll start getting clearer on how it all fits together and works. So let us start. Let's start with the core material. Before we go into the actual code, a couple of things. I'm not using Paizo, which is the environment you use. So my environment is not Paizo, which means I get to customize it a little bit more. So you'll see when I flip onto the screen, it's got a black background, this text is nice and orange, and all this kind of stuff. I'm using this because this is a more complex environment for an experienced programmer, and Paizo, the one you use, is perfectly fine. I've put in a couple of comments because what I want you, this line up here you don't need to worry about, it's not an issue for you, and this line below, so you can ignore the code written there, so don't even worry about copying it. So only concentrate on the code that occupies this space in between. Just very briefly, just so you know, the code at the top, this line up here and this line down here, are all about just stopping my screen from flashing on and disappearing. If I don't have those in this environment, I'll show you. You see, when I click run, there it is. Okay. If I take off the pause me stuff, did you see that? It flashes very quickly. It's because in this environment, if you just create a window, it'll last for about a millisecond and disappear. Okay, but you don't have that problem, so you don't have to worry about those bits of code. And we can get started. First point is, what does this line of code do where you say something like from graphics import with a star? Think of graphics as a toolbox. Okay, your coding is like a process of working with tools. So when you have a graphics toolbox, you have lots of different functions and tools that you can use to do your graphic programming. Star is a wild card. It's basically saying give me every tool inside this toolbox. Just as it says up here, I've created my own called functions, which is a toolbox, and I've asked for everything in there. And inside my functions, I've created a pause function, which allows me just to slow it down, just so that you can understand the whole screen makes sense. So one of the first tools I have is this thing called a graph window. And what that is a tool. You can put stuff inside this bracket here if you want to. You can specify information if you want to know, and this is technical, to turn away if you're not interested in the really hyper technical at this stage. Bear with me a second, scroll to the top of this file. This is the graphics toolbox, okay? And inside this graphics toolbox, you will find that there is it's actually called a class. It's a way of organizing it. Right, ton of tools within that. Let's go back so we don't get sidetracked. If I run that piece of code with my pause, it pops the screen on in front of you. Okay, the dimensions of that screen are actually given in the toolbox. They're hard coded. See that number there? You don't have to edit this. I've edited mine to make my screen a bit bigger, but actually in the graphics toolbox called graphics.py, there is a hard-coded size of your screen. So when you run it, that size that is occupying the screen, I'm controlling both that width and the height. And you can do other things to it, but we're not worried about that here. First thing I want to do then, and the only thing I want to do in this video, is actually just create a point. And luckily for you, there is a point object. Now, when I say a point, I mean an XY point, like a little black mark on a screen. Okay, that's essentially all I'm talking about. But look, when I open a bracket afterwards, and let's just talk about that in a second, when I do it, you notice, I don't know if you can see this, I'll zoom in if I can. look over here. I'll do it again, right? So you can see me. Do you see this little thing here which says XY? It's asking me for two numbers. And those two numbers tell this point object, this point, how far across is the X and how far down. So I'm going to say go, I don't know, 100 across and go 300 down. Okay? Let's remove the zoom. So that actually created a point object. So far the point object isn't doing anything, it's just been created, right? Now let's say I want to pop that on the screen. I do a dot and you notice this point can do tons of stuff. There's a whole list of things that are contained within the point. Useful tools, the point itself. This object is called an object, and it comes with tools built into itself, right? So if you hit dot, you see all the tools that it has. I want the draw tool, and I'm going to say draw me, but it's going to ask now where. This question here is saying, where do you want me to draw you? And I'll say, you see that window I created in that first line? I want you to draw me on that. Okay. And that's all that line means. Now, in the second video, and later on videos, I'm going to show you how we hold on to that point and then manipulate it and move it and stuff. At this stage, I've just got a point which I'm going to draw on screen. So I'm going to run it. And if I've done it, well, can you see this? It's quite tricky. It's there. Let's zoom in a bit. There. Oops, it's just disappeared. Bear with me a second. Let's get it back. Run it again. It's there. I won't click on it. I would just zoom in. Can you see that? That point. It's a little black dot. Not that cool. Shall we just change the color of it and give it some nice little features? Just some basic concepts related to it. So let's close the window down. Let's zoom back out to where we are. So before I draw it, my issue here is that I've got no way of manipulating this point. This single line of code simply creates a point and draws it. Okay. Now the problem is obvious at this stage, but let me spell it out. If I can't hold on to that point, I can't do anything else with it. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how we hold on to that point and then manipulate it. But before I do that, I'm just going to create a series of points. Right, let's just create another point here. Let's create another point here and give them slightly different distances. This one goes 100 across, 300 down. Let's make the second one go 100 across and 0 down, right? So let's get rid of that. Let's make the third point go 0 across. Let's make it 10 across so we can see it, and 300 down. And let's make the last one go, so that gives me 3 points. Let's make the very last one go 10 across and 0 down, right? So it should roughly be a square if I run that. Those 4 points will draw. So let's run it. And really awful drawing here. I don't know if you can see it. Well, I can see 2 of them. I can't see the others. It's pretty awful, right? Oh, we're just running out of time on this particular video. So the point is, what you should do is code this and play with it. Play with putting different points in, okay? But that will only take you so far. Before I stop this video, the next video will then introduce you to how we can manipulate points.